Oh, little Olympus. It's so cute how you pretend to still be in business. It inspires me to pretend that I'm taller. I'm about 6'3". It's the rulers that are off. I've measured myself with real rulers. I'm 6'3". Gerald Undun's 7'5". He's lying to you, like he always does in his videos. His information is not accurate at all. So today we talk a little Micro Four Thirds life. What are the advantages? There are several. Even though Sony a7S III seems to have caught up in everything, they got 10-bit, full frame, better autofocus, we got reasons to stay with our lovers, our tiny little lovers.
All I want is the perfect camera. All I want is the perfect camera.
So we're on the Olympus EM1 Mark III with a new lens. I bought a lens. We've done it. I've been debating getting this lens for so long. Back in Thailand, I tested it. I wasn't that impressed. I was like, a Tony 2? I was obsessive with the tone factor. And I was like, that's not going to do it. Tony 4? And from what I've tested, it's not equivalent like you think. It's not math-wise the same. I noticed the Laowa 7.5mm Tony 2 stopped down to Tony 4 was not the same tone factor as the 15mm Tony 2. It's not double. So we got the tiny 12mm Tony 2 on here. It's so light. And I have the Leica 12mm f1.4. It's snowing. Is this weather sealed? It's not. Good thing snow isn't wet. We're saved. So I ended up going with it, and we'll see how it performs. I brought the G9, so we'll just see, does it lose me? Because Olympus has amazing autofocus, but the Leica lens will lose me. It'll hunt. So it's the lens that's the problem. That should be completely fixed. You shouldn't see me lost once. Unless the snow disrupts the autofocus mechanism. And then we'll switch to the G9 and see if the Olympus is better on the G9. So the first obvious advantage, let's get it out of the way, is the size. Now, it doesn't happen with the bodies. The G9 body is almost the same as the A7S III. In fact, the A7C is lighter, and the GH5 is heavier than anything Sony has. So it's all about the lenses. And here's the deal. You cannot get Tony equivalents in a lens and still be smaller, really. Like you have that Voigtlander 10mm Tony 0.95. You get the tone factor back. You're back in control now. But that thing is heavier than any Sony lens. I heard footsteps. Is he in the Tone block? Where is he? He's Micro Four Thirds Tone. It's not quite the same, but it's good enough. He'll get there. So you have that Voigtlander freak lens that on paper has some dignity in the Tony 0.95, but it's soft, wide open, and it's still very heavy. And then when you think of the Leica 1.4, that's like a 2.8. It's the same weight as a 2.8 prime would be, if not more. And autofocus is worse. Was this video about advantages or disadvantages? Check the notes on that one. But that was the point. If you're willing to sacrifice the tone, you will get a much smaller lens. If it's a aperture equivalent, you're like half the size, if not 3 times as light. Nimble on your feet, you elf bitch. So the lenses can be much lighter at equivalent apertures. The 2.8 zooms, just you're sacrificing a nice look. Everything's in focus, that bird and the house. So you're bringing more into your life. Abundance mindset, good for you. Just know that. It looks like trash, but it's lighter. Look at you. Before we get to the next advantage, it's so funny. I bought this lens. Somebody reached out to me because I've been talking about it so much. They're like, I'll sell you this lens. $300. I'm like, because I've been looking for it. I've seen it for $650. I'm like, that's too much. And I've seen them down for $550. I'm like, Tony 2. Then I've seen it $500. I'm like, almost. And I have the Leica version. I'm like, why? But it's so small and cute. And then this guy, $300. I'm like, but there's a small problem. It's dented, and I'll never be able to put a filter on it, and that's all I can focus on. I can see the dent. That's all I can look at. Oh, that was a bad purchase. Oh, God. May the Olympus autofocus gods be with us. Unbelievable. So the next factor, advantage in the Micro Four Thirds life is stabilization. How's it been so far? Usually on these types of lenses, 24mm equiv, we're good on it. We're not with digital stab. In fact, let's just try it for a second. But I don't think you need it. And then you're wider. Let's try it though. I figure we test two birds with one stone. We switched to log. We were in flat and digital stab now. Are they toning? Are they detectable amounts of toning? Are they returning to their tone realm, where they belong? I do believe the reason you would switch to log is for the increased dynamic range that you need on a cloudy, overcast day where there's such harsh sunspots everywhere. So, we're in it. The reason I don't use this log Profat? Oh, can't edit that out. Is it's so sharp. It's over sharpened. You can see every straggly beer hair. Like, what am I trying to do here? Shave, asshole. But if you soften it slightly, is that better? Can you unsharpen sharpness? And it's like being oversaturated and then you bring it back down. But was it ruined? It was already up there and then bringing it in, it's never the same? Did we get to any points yet? So is this digital stab so much better? Let's switch back, because I don't think it is, and I don't want the less wideness. Okay, digital stab off, and we've switched to just the regular custom profile. No flat or log. She's loud. She's in the middle of the street. So as much as I pretend that the Sony has caught up in stab, it hasn't. So that's the main Micro Four Thirds advantage. It's better than APS-C. Nobody there is caught up. The Samsung was actually, if you slow down, with digital stab and the lens stab, that was actually pretty good. It's better than Fuji. So, Sony APS-C is a joke. Fuji X-T4 kind of joke-like. Micro Four Thirds is champion. Panasonic and Olympus, both good. Olympus has the slight advantage because of the digital, helps with the wide lenses. Less warpy stuff. I've noticed it, like the Leica 8 to 18 on the Panasonic was like super unusable, and then you switch to the Olympus, it's perfect. Still not enough tone, but that's the sacrifice you make. Now what I'm curious to see is how this lens performs on the G9, so we'll continue the video on that. I just switched back to flat so we have a proper comparison. I'm gonna switch to the G9 as we're walking. Let's notice if the stabilization gets worse. Did the colors get better or worse? Did you notice that we're different now? I did turn the saturation down on the HLG profile because I noticed it was definitely oversaturated, and that was my problem. Is it glory? So did the stabilization get better? I have a feeling that Panasonic has better IBIS than Olympus, but the digital, if you want to use it, which I don't with this lens, so Penny might be winning. How'd the colors get? Worse? Better? Should we get to the notes? May the Panasonic Pony of Hope bless us this night. Another advantage Micro Four Thirds seems to have over the competition is sharpness. Now don't quote me on this, versus full frame. Just the comparisons I've seen, it's usually like, oh wow, the Micro Four Thirds is always so much sharper. In a good way though, more detailed. It's possible. The GH5 versus like A7 III, GH5 usually does pretty well in comparisons unless you're doing autofocus, but now that we have an Olympus lens, it just does it perfectly, and there's never any pulsing in trees, right? Some people are saying, oh, I changed my G9 autofocus settings. What the hell are you talking about? You can't do it for video. I've looked. Where is it? What setting am I missing here? Help. So it seems that Panasonic cameras, Olympus, they just seem to have a more detailed image than full frame, but don't quote me on it. It's possible. Also, next hint. These aren't hints. There's usually more features, video features like waveforms. I never use them. I never take advantage of a damn thing. I wouldn't know what the hell I'm looking at. Things too small to read. But if you knew what you were doing, there's usually more tools. That was like the only one I could even think of. And the custom modes, at least on Panasonic, are better. You can save all video settings and it's just one flip. Whereas Sony's like, oh, sorry, we can't custom white balance. Did you need that? I didn't. All my complaints I don't even use. Another advantage seems to be, not always, but Micro Four Thirds is much cheaper. Like the G9 itself is $1,000. Sony a7S III, which most people picked this. They liked this better for like 4 times less money. But the lenses are kind of pricey. Like that Leica. Thank you so much, Marcus Picks. That was a fantastic video you made like last week. But who am I? I should do that. I haven't lived his life though. That's an interesting life you got there, my friend. Wow, you've done a lot. And you do a lot of good for this world. Keep on doing it. The Leica lens he gave me, that thing in Canada was like $1,800, $1,900. Whereas this one, $1,000. But like the Sony 20mm 1.8, pretty much better in every way for me. Cheaper. Which are you preferring so far, with the Olympus or this? Just from what I've done in the past, I've never tried the same exact lens. Yes, I have, but not this one. I prefer the Olympus colors and the autofocus. But how you handling it? Usually we have more dynamic range on the G9 and 10-bit, which never helps me, unless it's helping me right now. It's helping so hard. That brings us to another possible advantage for Micro Four Thirds, at least Olympus, is the color science. Some people love Panasonic outside. I like Panasonic colors. I prefer Olympus, but they're both like right up there. They're better than Sony, even though I ranked Sony higher than Panasonic in my video. Nobody takes me seriously. Color science, not bad, Micro. Admittedly, I'm reaching here about why Micro Four Thirds is better because, in all honesty, full frame has caught up. Every single system, like Nikon probably looks just as good as this, if not much better. Stabe, maybe. Sony has caught up now with the 10-bit and the super slow motion. Canon even though their IBIS isn't very good, their colors are crippled in the R6. Oh, we forgot what's red. Well, how do we add red? It's in the R5. This lens has a manual focus clutch. Nobody cares, but let me just... Can I punch in while recording? No. That's good. Didn't need that. And that doesn't punch in either. So, but with the peaking, nope. That should be accurate, which means I could do slow motion footage in focus for once. I just want to see how Panasonic performs as I wander in and out of frame. So the next advantage, auto exposure. I find Panasonic is one of the best at it. It's very quick and smooth and pleasing. It doesn't clip your skin usually. Just moving in and out and the scene's changing, but Penny knows. It's like face detect. It's not even a setting, but they know, like, expose this face. You're tracking a face right now, or you're pretending to at least, on the screen. You know, expose that. Whereas Sony is like a nightmare at times. Sometimes it's amazing, but it's not predictable. It's like Panasonic autofocus is unpredictable, but sometimes amazing. Same thing with Sony auto exposure. Wow, look at that. So, although Olympus, not the same boat. They're very slow to change. I don't understand what they're doing. You can't change any settings. It's like super bright, and then it'll be a good 15 seconds before it calms down. It's like, don't notice. It's like a frog in boiling water. If you start them off in cold water. Why are you boiling frogs, dickhead? Don't do it. They're not even healthy. You're on the frog diet. Are you seeing pulsing in the trees? Has it been happening, or have we fixed some stuff with the Olympus lens somehow being better than the Leica? Is it? All right, I have one final note, and we switch back to the Olympus to prove it. Not yet. Not yet. Just Just one last time, I promise. Is it amazing? I look underexposed. Did you notice a better increase in quality? So we'll do a little, I wanted to show you the dent. Are you seeing that? Right in there. Right in there, that little dent. I'll never be able to use an ND filter in my life. But it came with the hood, and it's silver. Oh God, the wrong way. Yeah, it looks kind of nifty. So we'll pay attention to how Olympus performs in this wavering autofocus mode. Less pulsing or more. One thing, you've been listening to each of the camera's preamps. I find this is the thing. With all these advantages, it doesn't really equate to the whole Micro Four Thirds system. It's really some of the advantages are for Panasonic, some are for Olympus. But you probably noticed Olympus has terrible preamps, Panasonic amazing preamps. So I was going to say Micro Four Thirds, preamps, but are they? Not anymore. It's just very hissy. It happens. It happens to the best of us. My last note, it's the ergonomics. It really is. I mean, Panasonic might have one of the best grips. Still to this day, Sony hasn't mastered it. The A7S III, it's okay. It's serviceable. It's not terrible. It's better than the A7 III. But this is like, there's grooves and shit. Frickin' grooves. And the Olympus, I might prefer that one. It's simpler, but it's like smaller and thinner, but nicer. Every Micro Four Thirds camera almost. The G85 was a little tiny. But compared to the Fuji X-T4, like what the hell is that? Crab-ass shit. Crabs invented it. Where did I go? I'm not even in the shot. If only Olympus could reacquire me fast and smoothly. But the ergonomics, and like not just the grip, we're talking like touchscreen functions better. I notice on the X-T4 I can't double tap a damn thing. It's so awkward. Double tap punches into focus, and it rarely ever works. It just starts sliding the things. If you slide down, it brings up the RGB. If you slide up, it brings up the level. And it's like I'm just double tapping, and you have to. It never works. And just everything about this, the buttons, custom buttons, the mode dial actually working, and it's just not locked, not having to on the Sony. The glory. And they look cool, don't they? Look at it. Look at them, Olympus. Oh, you're so magical. Got the Laowa lens on there. Look how tiny that lens is. Like, that's fantastic. This is why I love Micro Four Thirds. You sacrifice some tone, but you get tiny, even though the body weighs more than an FX6. I don't mind it. I don't mind it one bit. So what do you think? Micro Four Thirds all the way. This one's a little pricey, but the G9, that's a cheap one. I do prefer the Olympus. Not gonna lie to you. Except slow motion. There's no one perfect camera, my friend. Don't lie. Don't pretend there is. I'm gonna go. Do you agree with everything I said? I do believe you do. And you will show your gratitude by buying a Camera Conspiracies t-shirt. I'll go. Subscribe when I say that.